On July 19th, 1979, Glacier Bay looked calm and ordinary, until two names in a ranger log became the last solid trace. Glacier Bay National Park, Alaska. Fog presses low over the water. The bay is near freezing. Rock overhangs cut the shoreline into hidden pockets. The light is thin and gray. Sound carries far, then drops off. Daniel Hart is 26. He is from Spokane, Washington. He works as an apprentice carpenter. His wife, Lily Hart, is 24. She teaches elementary school. They are on a honeymoon cruise. They pack light for shore, a Pentax K1000 with a 24 exposure Kodak roll, a small blue day pack, an orange rain jacket. They sit through the Bartlett Cove Ranger talk. In the ranger station log, someone notes D and L Hart. It is neat, simple, and clear. They choose the first path every visitor learns, a short shoreline boardwalk near Bartlett Cove. It is safe, marked, close to the water. They plan to reboard by 10:30 a.m. They will stay on the ship overnight. No backcountry permit, no trail miles. Just a look at the edge of the park. Waves tap the pilings. Kelp lifts and falls. The camera hangs from a strap. The day pack rides high on a shoulder. The orange jacket stands out in the gray. Ordinary details, easy to overlook. The kind you only notice later. They return from the boardwalk without issue. No urgent note, no warning. Their names sit in the ranger log, and that is it. The day slides into evening. Night comes fast in the bay when fog holds. Cold water keeps the decks quiet. Under the aft overhang, the air feels still. At 11:20 p.m., a final routine moment. Daniel and Lily are last seen on the promenade deck moving toward the tender platform. No argument, no scene. Just two people crossing from shadow to shadow under the overhang. The ship is its own small town. The tender platform is a short walk. Lights glow along the rail. The water below is black and flat. From here, the record tightens. Logs, not memories, carry the weight. Timestamps matter, so do doors, scanners, and lists. Then the first crack appears, not loud but final. The gangway log shows no late-night scan back aboard after 11 p.m. Morning breaks over Glacier Bay on July 20th. Breakfast seating comes and goes. Two chairs stay empty. By 9 a.m., a room steward unlocks a quiet door. The bed is unmade. No bags by the threshold, no note, no sign of Daniel Hart or Lily Hart. The steward alerts ship security. A simple wellness check turns into a search. The ship begins an internal sweep, deck by deck, stairwell by stairwell, storage rooms, lounges, the promenade under the aft overhang. Names are called, crew check doors and count life jackets. Nothing. Outside the rails, search and rescue begins. A Coast Guard cutter enters the channel. A helicopter holds low and slow and starts a grid. They trace the water near the ship's path. They push wider, then back again. Visibility shifts. Fog opens like a curtain, then falls. The tide is dropping. Rocks and kelp heads lift into view. The window to spot anything on the surface narrows. Security returns to the couple's cabin. This is where the record draws its hard line. Passports remain. A suitcase sits closed. A Polaroid from the ship's photo desk is left behind. It is the kind of souvenir every passenger gets. The 35mm camera is not here. The small blue day pack is not here. What should anchor a simple vacation is missing. What proves identity and plans to return is still in the room. The cutter keeps the grid. The helicopter banks and starts again. Fog patches cut down the sight lines. Cold water keeps debris hard to read. The falling tide exposes ledges and then swallows them again. Minutes matter. The ship holds position as long as it can. By midday, the first official language appears in the paperwork. The working theory is simple and brutal. Probable fall overboard overnight. It fits the water, it fits the hour. It fits the way cold takes sound and turns it small. It explains how two people can vanish from a moving town and leave almost nothing behind. But even simple theories have to meet the list of facts. Passports are still in the cabin. A suitcase is still in the cabin. A Polaroid is still in the cabin. The 35mm camera and day pack are not. If a fall happened from the promenade deck, why would a day pack not show up in the room or on deck or in a lost and found sweep? The question sits there. It is not proof. It is friction. Security reviews the logs that track movements no one remembers in detail. Manifests, duty notes, the routine paperwork that becomes a map when memory fails. One line stands out. It does not solve anything. It does not name anyone. But it is the first hard edge against the simple answer. The tender log shows an 11:05 p.m. Crew errand, departure not listed on the passenger manifest. 1980 arrives and the paper trail cools. The file moves from a busy desk to a quieter drawer. Search and rescue notes fade into summaries. The ship sails new routes. Glacier Bay stays the same. Fog, cold water, rock overhangs. Two names remain in the ranger station log, steady and small. Daniel Hart, Lily Hart. The case slides into cold case files. Through 1981 and 1982, the pattern forms. Family calls come on set days. Letters arrive with careful handwriting and simple asks. Flyers appear at ports where the ship docks in summer. Each piece says the same thing in new words. Please call if you heard anything. Please call if you saw them on deck. Please call if you have an old photo or a note in a journal. The replies are kind but thin. Nothing shifts the line that was drawn at 11 p.m. Glacier Bay Rangers keep their own rhythm. They answer the phone. They log the contact. They add each message to the file. Once a year, a note comes addressed to the ranger station. It asks if there were any updates that July. The answer stays the same. No new entries, no new scans, no new witnesses. The file holds. By now, the story of the Newlyweds begins to live in two places. One is the official binder. The other is the quiet talk that moves along docks and galley tables. The talk does not point fingers. It travels in short, careful phrases and ends with a shrug. People say the words they have. Off-limits beach drops, pocket coves, after hours. The rumor that returns the most is simple. Some crew made quick beach drops where passengers could not go. A small pocket cove, a place tucked under an overhang. In bad weather, it gave cover from wind and waves. In good weather, it stayed out of sight. The idea is not a confession. It is a whisper about convenience and habit. It is mentioned in a note and then filed with the rest. Another rumor crosses the same path. It is talk of night runs. No headlines, no sharp claims, just short lines about smuggling runs that came and went like tides. It is recorded as rumor, not fact. The cold case file labels it as such. It sits there to remind anyone who reads it that the bay has two maps, the official one and the one people use when no one is looking. The file does not draw a line from the rumor to the couple. It cannot. Community memory keeps a softer kind of record. Rangers remember a short exchange at Bartlett Cove. The couple asked about tide times and safe shorelines. It was basic, careful, the kind of question new visitors ask. The words stay because of the way the day looked. Gray light, light chop, and a precise tone. Tide tables matter when you face a pocket cove. Even a short walk can turn into a wait if water rises against rock. A backcountry guide holds a different picture, not names, a color. He remembers an orange rain jacket moving along the edge of a shore path. The color is bright against the fog. It carries well in memory for years. You see it once and it sits there the way safety colors do. He cannot say the exact hour. He cannot say the exact point. He says only that he remembers the jacket. The file keeps that line because the file keeps anything a person can stand behind. 1983 ends without a new artifact. The case stays still, the family does not. Calls and letters do not stop. Flyers go up again in the next season. The ranger station logs every contact. The cold case binder grows by a few pages a year. Nothing inside moves the first theory, but each page pushes against silence. Quiet persistence has its own weight. In 1984, a new line enters the file. A beachcomber reports a blue windbreaker found along a stretch of gravel. It is not turned in as an object. It is described in a call and a short written note. The detail that locks people to the line is a stitch, a faint stitch of a last name. Hart. The person who reports it says they saw the name, soft and half faded near the collar seam. The ranger adds the note. The ranger marks the date. Without the item, nothing else can be done. A follow-up visit finds nothing on the strand. The windbreaker is logged but never verified. The years keep moving. 1985, 1986, 1987, the same summer circuit repeats. Families crowd rails to watch ice calve in the distance. The water looks flat and calm until it does not. The Newlyweds story becomes a caution told in low voices about tides and time. No one wants to scare visitors. The tone stays even. You respect the water. You check tide tables. You do not step ashore where you are not allowed. By 1988 and 1989, the case has a shape that most cold cases take. People who were there move away. People who knew routines switch ships. A few retire. A few forget. The paper does not forget. It keeps the same entries in the same order. Ranger log, family note, yearly status, cold case. Into the early 1990s, the family pattern does not change. A letter in spring. A note in July to Glacier Bay Rangers. A phone call ahead of the ship's peak season. The language is polite. The request is simple. The answer is careful and consistent. The file grows by inches but not by change. The Polaroid in the room, the missing 35mm camera, the day pack not found, these details are known but static. The record remains a frame with no movement inside it. The quiet talk about beach drops and night runs still stirs now and then. A cook mentions it to a deckhand. A deckhand mentions it to a guide. No one owns it as fact. It is the kind of talk that moves with seasonal staff and fades at the end of summer. The cold case binder keeps those lines near the back as context. They are not proof. They are a map of maybes that stay outside the main route. 1995 closes with no new artifacts and no new status. Glacier Bay looks the way it did in 1979. Fog runs along the surface like breath. The overhangs hold their shadows. The ranger station keeps the cold case on a shelf within reach. The names in the log do not blur. They sit where they were written. Across all those years, one small lead keeps its edge because it never had a chance to dull. It is the only item that hinted at contact with the couple's name after they vanished, and it never took shape. In 1984, a beachcomber reported a blue windbreaker with a faint heart stitch, logged in the file but never verified. In 1997, new eyes open an old box. The cold case is quiet on paper. The water and the overhangs are not. Retired Alaska State Trooper Mara Ellison volunteers to review the file. She asks for the cold case box and clears a table. She sets the binder on the left, loose notes on the right. She moves slow, then steady. She reads every line before she reads it again. She starts with the ranger station log. Bartlett Cove entries come first. D&L Hart is still there, neat and small. She notes tide questions and basic shore safety. She marks the page with a thin tab. Then she turns to the next stack. Port logs and ship logs follow. Routine times, arrival stamps, departure stamps. She lines them up in a simple grid. Day on one axis, hour on the other. She looks for gaps, not headlines. She looks for anything that refuses to sit straight on the grid. Then come the tender sheets. These are different. They carry short notes in practical handwriting. Fuel, trips, quick codes that made sense in the moment. She runs her finger down each column. She circles a line and moves on. She comes back to the same line a minute later. There it is, a late fuel entry for a tender. It does not match the recorded trips. The hours do not align with the posted runs. The numbers say the boat burned fuel that no scheduled trip accounts for. On its own, it is only an odd line. In a cold case, it is an anomaly that earns a tab. She copies the hours to a clean page. She lays the copy beside the ship's daily schedule. The gap stays. It does not vanish when she checks it twice. It holds after a third pass. She does not write a theory. She writes fuel entry not equal log trips and draws a short arrow. Now she spreads the charts, coastlines, soundings, notes from rangers, photos from earlier seasons. She asks a simple question out loud to herself. Where could a tender go that does not show on the books and still stay close? An off-map clue surfaces in the quiet way local knowledge often does. An unlisted shingle beach that locals call Gull Pocket, not on the passenger route, tucked under a low cliff overhang, off-limits to passengers, a place out of wind and out of view, a place that fits how tides run and how small boats use cover. She prints the name on a sticky tab and places it on the chart where the shoreline folds. Gull Pocket. The words sit just off the official path. The shape of the place matters. A narrow shingle, drift logs near the toe, a low overhang that turns sound small. It fits the environment that held the heart's last confirmed steps: fog, cold water, rock. Mara cross-references tide tables with the date range from the logs. She is not looking for drama. She is looking for windows. Extreme low tides open shelves that hide under normal water. They expose pockets that can be reached by skiff and by foot for a short span. She finds an approaching window. She marks it with a pencil tick on the calendar. The plan remains simple. Do not guess from a desk. Go look at the shoreline when the water is at its lowest. Use a local skiff. Bring a tide chart. Approach the pocket and confirm if a landing makes sense. Stand where the numbers say to stand and see if the shape of the cove tells a story the papers cannot. She writes the steps in a short list. Skiff, chart, extreme low, gull pocket, visual confirm. She phones to reserve a boat and a safe window. She informs the ranger station that she will be near an off-limits pocket for observation only. The language stays careful. This is not a search. It is a site check linked to a fuel anomaly and a name on a chart. The cold case box starts to look different with one flagged line and one flagged place. None of this proves a landing. None of this proves contact. But the paper trail has stopped drifting. It has a direction again. Ranger log, port log, tender, sheets. Fuel entry that does not match. Off-map pocket under an overhang. One step, then the next. She builds a small packet for the field day. Copies of the relevant log pages. A print of the shoreline with Gull Pocket penciled in. Tide table for the selected date. A simple checklist so nothing is missed in the moment. No speech about motive, no speech about blame. Just the route from paper to shore. As the date nears, the plan holds. Weather looks stable enough for a look. The tide will fall to the level she needs. The skiff is set. The ranger station is aware. The goal is modest. See the pocket at its lowest and measure if a tender could have idled in the lee without drawing eyes from the main deck. Then a new line enters the story at the worst and best time. Days before the shoreline scout, a beachcomber walks a strand on Chichagof Island. Wrack collects in rows after wind. In that tangle sits a small cylinder the color of old mustard. A sealed yellow 35mm film canister. The beachcomber turns it in. No fanfare. No guess about where it came from. Just a handoff and a receipt. The item is logged. The label notes place and date. The canister is intact and closed. Mara gets the call that something has been turned in from the rack. The description is brief. The timing is sharp. The canister is now on a list to be evaluated. The skiff plan stands. So does the tide chart. But the cold case box just added a new mystery box to the table. A sealed yellow 35mm film canister from Chichagof Island turned in days before the scout. The shoreline answers with objects, not words. At extreme low tide, the pocket cove shows itself, narrow gravel and quiet. A low rock overhang leans over the shingle like a lid. Drift logs lie crosswise, wedged and gray. Kelp ropes the edges. In the back, half buried in stone, sits a weathered fire ring. Ash long gone, just a circle of darker rock pressed into place. The gravel is tight underfoot, mixed with shell and glassy chips. The air smells like iodine and wet wood. Sound is soft in here. The overhang turns the cove into a hush. Any landing in this pocket would be hidden from a main deck glance. The site fits the earlier paper trail, the off-limits nature, the cover from wind, the way the tide can trap or open a path by inches. The first artifact breaks the quiet. Near the drift logs, a curved piece of sun-whitened plastic sits half-exposed, worn smooth. A paddle blade fragment. The surface shows a faded stenciled mark, just a single number that still holds. 3. It matches the way the ship labeled her tenders. Tender number 3. The fragment is not a whole story, but it places a part of a tender inside this cove. It connects the fuel anomaly to a real shoreline and gives weight to a route that never appeared on a manifest. The fragment's edges are beach-rounded. It has been here long enough to lose its gloss. That matters. It tells you the piece did not wash in yesterday. It lived through tides, storms, and summer sun. The number, even faint, stays like a tag. It lets the cold case move one notch from rumor toward record, a tender component at the pocket under the overhang. The second artifact waits in the rack line where kelp piles after the tide drops back. A strap emerges from the tangle, thin, black, and torn at one end. The weave and width say what it carried. A 35mm camera strap, not a full camera, not a lens cap. The strap alone. The cut is not clean. Fibers splay where load once pulled. In a deck fall, a camera often hits and stays with the body or the deck. Here, a strap tangled with kelp inside a shoreline pocket points to something else, a shore landing that turned hard. It does not prove the who, it changes the where. The strap and the paddle blade sit like two rungs on the same ladder. Tender 3, then camera strap. The cove is no longer only a shape on a chart, it is a site with pieces that match what the paper hinted at. The question that follows is the same one that started this case. Do we have the couple inside this picture? The next item, brought in days earlier from Chichagof Island, will try to answer that. A sealed yellow 35mm film canister goes to a lab with forensic salvage experience. The process is slow and careful. Salt and time make film fragile. First, a desalination rinse to pull out what the ocean left behind. Then a controlled drying phase so the emulsion does not blister or crack. No heat, no rush. Finally, a low-contrast development bath intended to coax images from thin negatives. The goal is not art. The goal is legible frames. 8 frames survive. Not all are clear, but 8 hold enough to count. The lab documents each in order. The first frames show a shingle beach at dusk. The gravel looks like the pocket cove. A low overhang crowds the top edge. Drift logs lean in the background. In one frame, Daniel stands near the waterline, shoulders turned toward the lens. In another, Lily faces the camera, the orange jacket a soft, dark highlight in the fading light. The personal link lands in the details. In Lily's hand, a small torn page from a notebook. A simple tide note is visible. Numbers, arrows, the kind of shorthand you carry after you ask a ranger about safe shorelines. It is not a full journal. It is a quick guide. High water, low water, a narrow window. You can see how the couple was tracking the tide like new visitors who listened and then wrote it down. The Polaroid from their cabin offers no help here. There are no negatives for a Polaroid. It remains a souvenir, fixed and separate from these frames. The 35mm roll, fragile as it is, becomes the only set of images that move the couple off the ship and onto a shingle beach under an overhang at dusk. Not an official landing, not a passenger trailhead. A pocket that fits the name locals use and the cover the paper trail suggested. The lab also attempts a partial DNA test on the recovered camera strap. The sample is weak, saltwater, time, and abrasion have done their work. The result is inconclusive. Not a match, not an exclusion. The strap stays as a context piece, not a biological link. It still matters. It pairs with the frames and the paddle blade to hold the shoreline picture together. Frame by frame, the sequence builds a modest but firm ladder. Sight, tender trace, camera trace, and the couple present at the shore with tide notes in hand. Each artifact is small alone. Together they bend the timeline away from the simple overboard theory and toward a short, unauthorized landing at the Pocket Cove. The cold case shifts from open water to gravel and kelp beneath a rock ceiling. Then the last image arrives, the one that closes the roll and opens a new gap. The final frame is blurred at the edge. The light is thin. Grain rises. Near the border, under the overhang, a shape stands just outside the couple's shadow. Not driftwood, not rock. The outline is human, soft, off to the side and turned toward the lens. The last frame catches a third figure near the edge of the overhang, standing just outside Daniel and Lily's shadow. The record asks for care now. The shoreline gave us objects. The film gave us faces. What remains is the narrow space between. Theory A, tide entrapment. The Pocket Cove sits under a low overhang. It opens at low water and tightens as the tide climbs. The shingle tilts toward the rock. Drift logs pin the back line. If the couple stepped in during a safe window, the return could have vanished in minutes. The evidence supports this shape. Lily holds a small notebook page with tide notes in one frame. Numbers and arrows point to timing. Other frames show slick, wet rock and a climb that looks awkward. The camera angle is low, like someone bracing while moving up. It is enough to sketch an accident driven by water and time, but the limit is fixed in the last image. A third figure stands near the edge of the overhang. Software blurred, human shape. If rising water closed the exit and nothing else happened, who is that person just outside the couple's shadow? The presence of that figure complicates a simple accident. It keeps the door open. Theory B, unauthorized crew tender drop. This line follows paper and plastic, not rumor. The tender sheets show a fuel entry late at night that does not match recorded trips. The ship labeled tenders with numbers. On the cove, a sun-whitened paddle blade fragment bears a faded 3. A log entry notes an 11:05 p.m. crew errand that never appears on the passenger manifest. Put them together and you have a tender that likely moved when the books say it did not, and a fragment from tender number 3 resting inside the Pocket Beach. This theory can explain how 2 passengers reached an off-limits shoreline under an overhang. It can explain why the landing would be hidden from a deck view and why fuel was burned without a listed run. But it holds at a hard limit. There is no signed manifest that places names in that boat. No crew member is named in the record. Without a manifest or a witness statement, the line remains a supported path, not a confirmed trip. Theory C. Foul play linked to an after-hours shore visit. This path takes the clues in their hardest order. The final frame shows a third figure at the edge of the overhang. The couple's 35mm camera and blue day pack are missing from their cabin. The pocket cove is off-limits to passengers. If an after-hours landing happened, someone else could have been present when the tide turned. That would account for a blurred person in the frame and missing items afterward. The evidence here is suggestive but not direct. The camera strap recovered in kelp ties to a camera, not a person. The lab attempted partial DNA on the strap. The result was inconclusive. It neither links nor clears anyone. There is no item with a confirmed biological match to Daniel or Lily from the cove. There is no recovered notebook page to test. Without that, foul play cannot rise above possibility. The caution stands. Across all three, the language has to stay careful and respectful. The cove can trap. A tender can land unseen. A third figure can signal company or danger. Each theory answers part of the picture and leaves another piece loose. Tide entrapment fits the terrain and the tide notes, but the third figure stands in the way of a clean accident. An unauthorized tender drop fits the fuel discrepancy, the paddle blade 3, and the late log entry, but lacks names on paper. Foul play fits the blurred figure and the missing items in an off-limits place, but has no direct physical link and only an inconclusive partial DNA attempt. The file holds all three in parallel. Investigators do not have the room to collapse them into one story. The artifacts built a ladder up to the cove, not a single route down. So the questions remain precise. What closed the exit first? Water or a person? Who used tender number 3 and for what? Where did the camera and day pack go and when? One thought keeps returning to the edge of every page and every frame. It is simple. It is small. It cuts across all three theories and lands on motive, planning, and risk. Why did the couple carry tide times if they planned to stay aboard all night? In 1999, a former deckhand steps forward with one small square of proof. A dated Polaroid. It shows tender number 3 easing away at 11:12 p.m. The frame is simple. The meaning is not. The image lists 3 shapes in the boat, 1 crew and 2 civilians. That count lines up with a quiet story the logs never told. In the blur of motion, a sleeve catches the light, orange, the same color Lily wore. Near the bow, a faint fold sits against a hand. It looks like a map crease in Daniel's grip. The photograph does not say where they are going. It says they were leaving, and when. This single picture pulls the paper trail tight. A late fuel entry that did not match recorded trips. A paddle blade fragment with a faded 3 found inside the pocket cove. Now a dated Polaroid showing tender number 3 at 11:12 p.m. with 1 crew and 2 civilians. Each item stands alone. Together they draw a narrow path toward the shoreline under the overhang. Investigators update the file with care. The case remains open. The Coast Guard changes the entry from probable overboard to shoreline incident, foul play not excluded. The language is exact. It does not accuse. It widens the lane for what might have happened in that pocket where tide and rock meet. The next steps follow in plain order. Plan side scan sonar for the cove at the next workable low tide. Use it to read the bottom where eyes cannot go. Map the pocket edge to edge. Look for metal, wood, or anything that suggests a tender part beyond the paddle blade fragment already found. At the same time, the community is asked to help in the one way only time can allow. A public call goes out for any 1979 passenger photos or journals. Not memories, not rumors. Physical things that can be dated and scanned. A snapshot of a boat against dark water. A note about an unusual tender run. A line in a notebook about a late-night shore stop. Anything with a stamp or a page edge that can be placed on a timeline without guesswork. The file adds the Polaroid and the status change to the front of the binder. The Cove plan sits on top of the sonar request. The public notice goes to ranger boards and port offices. One photo, one line, one map mark. Any of it could fix the last clean step the film could not show. But even as the case gains shape, one gap widens. The kind of gap you cannot search with a helicopter or a sonar head. It lives in a cabinet where paper should be. The ship's tender manifest for that night is missing from the company archive. Dusk returns to the pocket beach. The overhang lowers the sky. Water pushes hard against drift logs and stones. Kelp lifts and settles. Sound is small here, like the cove is holding its breath. The shape of the shoreline has not changed. The gravel still tilts toward rock. The same narrow strip of ground where the tide gives minutes, then takes them back. Stand at the edge and look in. You can see the path the frame suggested. Shingle, shadow, the line where light ends. If you listen, the water answers the same way it did then. Push, pause, push again. Every surge presses the story tighter and still leaves a gap where the last step should be. The file rests on a ranger station shelf each summer. The names in the log have not faded. They sit beside tide tables and charts, and every July 2 envelopes arrive. One from each family, short cards, simple words. The same request in a softer voice. Any news? The cards are stamped, dated, and filed. The ritual does not change. Quiet persistence year after year. Night pulls in early under the rock ceiling. The drift logs nudge, then thud. The cove goes dark in stages, water first, then gravel, then the undercut where shadows live. What we have is what we can hold in our hands. Logs, photos, a blade fragment, a strap, a change in status. What we do not have is the motion between the final frames and the water at our feet. The film gave us the beach, but not the last step.